Lake Pleasant is our regulatory storage feature. We seasonally fill this lake in the wintertime when power rates are cheap. And then in the summertime when power rates go back up, we deliver the water from this lake back into our system and to Phoenix and Tucson. So this is the major storage facility on the project. The project is a water conveyance system, basically 336 miles long, mostly open channel canal. We have about 20 miles of pipeline at the end of the system. There are 14 pumping plants. We lift the water from the Colorado to south of Tucson. It's a total lift of about 2,200 feet. The initial lift right at Lake Havasu on the Colorado River is 820 feet, single stage pump. And after that we have the 13 relift plants that move the water all the way through the system, as well as we pump into Lake Pleasant. And then when we are delivering out of Lake Pleasant, we generate going back into the system. There are agricultural users, municipal users, and Native Indian tribe users throughout the system. We have over 100 customers that we deliver water to. The agricultural users take about half of the water. We move anywhere from 1.4 to 1.8 million acre feet of water a year, and the agricultural users use about half of that. The other about half is used by municipal users, both in the city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson, as well as all the suburbs in between. The Indian users take about a third of the water. The major secondary impact is at our main relift plant on the Colorado River. As I said earlier, we lift the water 820 feet at that location. Lake Havasu has historically been a very clean lake, so that facility does not have any trash rakes to remove material from the trash racks in front of the pump units. So in 2008 was the first time we noticed that we were starting to get a weed buildup, floating weed mats that would float into our intake. We started a weed operation in the summer of 2008. In the summer of 2009, that weed impact became somewhat overwhelming to us. We had to hire weed boats to collect that material. We had excavators and all kinds of other equipment, cranes and buckets that we were trying to get the weeds out of the intake before they plugged up the plant. In the summer of 2010, we anticipated that situation, and we had weed boats on station, we had equipment staged, and we still were not able to keep up with the influx of weeds, and we had to actually shut the plant down a number of times in the summer of 2010. And we're anticipating that situation to get probably worse in the summer of 2011. So we are now in the process of developing trash rakes and other kinds of potentially other systems that will allow us to get that material out of our intake channel before it impacts the pump operation there. And that's a cost for us of nearly $500,000 a year for that equipment and that operation. The biggest cost, though, is that if we have to shut the plant down, we've already paid for the power for that operation, and that plant consumes some 280 megawatts of power. So when you have to dump that kind of load and then you have to buy it again, that gets very expensive. So that is a major impact to us. I would say that we're most likely looking at maybe 2 to 3 times the mechanical removal cost in the power loss that we would have there. The Quagga mussels are a direct impact for the weeds. They have cleared the lake up. In fact, we were taking samples last week, and the water in Lake Havasu right out of the lake is almost drinking water quality. The Quagga mussels have cleaned up everything. There's virtually nothing left to eat in that lake. And that clarity allows more weeds to grow because the light penetrates deeper into the lake, creates more surface area for the weeds to grow on, and prompts their growth to be even greater than they would normally be. And we now have 5 species of weeds. 3 of them are invasive species. and they continue to grow more and more each year. So we expect, we don't know where the end point is of what the actual weed loading is going to end up being eventually. The quagga mussels are a direct impact for the weeds. They have cleared the lake up. In fact, we were taking samples last week, and the water in Lake Havasu right out of the lake is almost drinking water quality. The quagga mussels have cleaned up everything. There's virtually nothing left to eat in that lake. And that clarity allows more weeds to grow because the light penetrates deeper into the lake, creates more surface area for the weeds to grow on, and prompts their growth to be even greater than they would normally be. And we now have 5 species of weeds. 3 of them are invasive species, and they continue to grow more and more each year. So we expect, we don't know where the end point is of what the actual weed loading is going to end up being eventually. We have other problems internally in the system with weed growth, primarily at the first relift plant. Some of those 5 species that we see in the lake are now showing up in that first section of canal before the first relift plant. That is causing us major problems at that plant. We have trash racks that we have imaged that show us that those racks are bent because they've actually experienced loading from weeds that was above their design value. We have other weed issues more internally in the system, and we expect that to continue to expand as the water clarity shows up in the system. And we're building new trash rakes at 3 of our major relift plants to try to deal with those situations. And that cost is at about $2 million to $2.5 million per plant. We didn't talk about my monitoring program, which is probably one of the most extensive that anyone has. We initially started off monitoring all of our relift plants, all of our forebays, all our afterbays. We had at one time 450 sampling plates throughout the system that we gathered weekly. And so we also did around 30 plankton samples throughout the system, and I have people trained to view those plankton samples under polarized light under microscope so we can track the influx of veligers into the system. We do have millions, literally millions of veligers hourly coming through that first relift plant, and it appears that those veligers are still viable once they get through that plant, but we're suspecting that that plant is causing some problems with those veligers because they do not settle internally in the system. And that's kind of a major key issue that we're trying to figure out what is causing those veligers to be non-viable or are not settlers into the system. Lake Pleasant, of course, is heavily infested with quagga mussels. Because we do not see the quagga mussels anywhere else in the 160 miles between here and the Colorado River, we suspect that the quagga mussels that are in Lake Pleasant got here from a boat. They probably were not pumped in our water because the veligers that we're pumping through our system will not settle within our system or other places outside our system. So we're suspecting that the guys in here came from a boat. Last year we noticed that we thought we had blue-green algae. This year we are going to be monitoring for the blue-green. As I mentioned early on, we are the major water supply for the city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson. Blue-green algae would be a very bad thing for those municipal treatment plants because they would have to deal with the taste and odor issues from the blue-green algae. So that is a concern that's down the road that we haven't really faced yet, but we think it's coming.